watching the It's Her Time podcast with Cody and Jess. Welcome back to the It's Her Time podcast. My name is Cody Sanders, and I'm a functional nutritionist and a holistic health practitioner and the host of this show. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about how important it is for each of us to ditch the all or nothing approach when it comes to weight loss. Actually, this approach has been something that's been possibly holding a lot of us back from our weight loss goals. Today, I've invited a special guest, Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer. She is a functional medical doctor and the founder of Well Empowered. She is full of information that I'm sure each of us are going to be able to take and be able to implement into our life. I can't wait for you to tune into this conversation. But before we dive into it, let's join Jess for a Mixers Girl Say.
On today's Mixers Girl Say, I'm actually going to be the Mixers Girl that says something. It's a personal experience that I had a couple weeks ago. I'm a mom of identical twin girls. They're darling.
They're the cutest.
They're full of so much energy and personality and sass and spice and fun, and I love them. So my 9-year-old twin daughters, there's a whole purpose of why I want to share this story. But a while ago, my daughter, we were trying to leave on a vacation. So the whole car was packed up. Yes. You all know what it's like to get your kids packed up to go on a road trip.
Yes.
Everything's packed up, and one of my daughters, she comes to me and told me that her stomach was hurting so bad and that she was feeling really nauseous, and she threw up once. And I'm like, okay, of course we're going to take the stomach flu to the family reunion.
Spread it all around.
Of course, this is going to be what happens. So I'm like, okay, lay on the couch for a little bit. We'll get ready to leave in a little bit. Let's see if we can get this to go away. We'll sip some water, get a cold rag. I'm finishing up packing. She comes into my room and she's like, Mom, I need to go to the doctor. And then she starts screaming and crying about how much pain her stomach is in. And I knew, she knew exactly what she needed.
Yes.
Took her right to the doctor. I called. And I'm like, she said it with such authority.
Yes.
And I was so proud of her for stating exactly what she needed.
Yeah.
And so I called the pediatrician, took her to the doctor. Turns out she had an appendicitis, and I was supposed to be leaving on a road trip and be in the middle of nowhere all evening long. Had I gotten in the car, she would have been in this excruciating pain. And so it turns out she had an appendicitis surgery that night about 10 p.m. And I loved so much having a daughter that advocated for herself and for her health and knew what she needed. I, for sure, have been the mom on many occasions, or even for myself, where I've been like, no, everything's going to be fine. Let's not ask for the help. Don't be dramatic.
Yeah.
Or, are you sure, to your kids? Or like, just go to sleep, or things like that. Which sometimes that is the case. Sometimes your kids do just need sleep or something. But I could tell in that moment that she had advocated for herself, that she was paying attention to her body. She knew that the pain was something that she could not get over on her own. And the reason I'm sharing that is because we have had to learn on so many different occasions personally that we have to advocate for our own health. And we know our bodies better than anyone will ever know our bodies. And so when something is feeling wrong or feeling off, speak up, find resources, ask for help, lean into people that are knowledgeable. I am constantly having to use Cody's knowledge to better my health and wellness. So we're just pro women, speaking up, knowing what you need, finding solutions, asking for help.
Yes, and finding the people that are actually going to not dismiss you. You know, like, you were such a good mom, by the way, so good. But you could tell exactly, like, this is different. Because how many times do we relate to, like, what maybe, you know, like you're describing, like, where you're like, maybe you're just tired. Maybe you just haven't eaten. Maybe you're just feeling, you know, like ignored or whatever. As women, when we go to the doctor, oftentimes we get dismissed. And that's one of the most frustrating things ever. And I know we get DMs from you girls on a daily basis. And we love being a resource for all of us to help, like, encourage you and empower you to recognize that you're not an inconvenience to anyone. And if you know that there's something going on that's not right and not functioning the way it's supposed to, like Jess said, you are your body's best expert. You know your body better than anyone. So be like Remy and keep speaking up for yourself. Being your own advocate goes a long way. And maybe we all can learn from this and be able to be like better at this when we're out there trying to seek solutions ourselves.
And one thing about the story that I'm sure those of you listening will be like, oh my gosh, the doctor, the first and awesome pediatrician.
Sure.
The doctor first tested her for strep and it was positive.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay, you have strep and here you're going to get an antibiotic and on your way.
Mm-hmm.
And Remy was the one that was like, no, something is wrong here. And the doctor put her back up on the table and checked for more things. And that was what then continued us going to get an ultrasound and then surgery. So I think it's amazing when we can say, okay, well, that was a solution to one thing, but I still know also there's that. So, I mean, that was our Mixers Girl say.
She's so brave, and you're so brave, and that was a lot to go through, but I'm glad that Remy's on this side of things.
Yes.
What a great lesson.
Listen to your bodies and advocate for yourselves. Now let's get into the episode.
Mixers is a company made for women by women. Each of our products have been carefully and lovingly crafted to support you in all stages of your life, providing you with the optimal health you deserve. Each ingredient we handpick is 100% all natural, backed by science, and chosen specifically to better your life physically, mentally, and hormonally. Each product empowers your body to take charge of its monthly hormonal shift and flows, empowering you to live life to the fullest. Let Mixers take care of your needs from sunup to sundown, and you take care of the rest. Check us out at mixers.com, Mixhers.
Okay, this conversation is going to be really fun because we have Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer here that's going to be able to share so much of her wisdom with us. Jessie, I want you to say hi to the girls and tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this practice? How did you become so passionate about helping women?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join you and your tribe here. It's such a treat to be with you. And, I think much like probably you and your listeners, I always say straight lines are boring. And right. And so for me, how I arrived at what I do right now certainly had many twists and turns, but ultimately was born out of my own challenges and struggles with, in particular, the younger me, my weight, and, struggling with my weight, struggling with my body and everything that was for me. And ultimately arriving at a place where I really got the impact of that continued struggle over the course of years and over a decade, that it was costing me the precious opportunity to be fully present and be a full contribution in this life. And I really just got my life's supposed to be about so much more than the scale. And at that moment, I made a promise to the universe and said, ultimately made a request. If you help me figure out my way forward, I promise I'll make my life about guiding others to do the same. So it started with my own journey and figuring out my own way forward. And through that, in order to be able to effectively guide people, I went to graduate school, got 2 graduate degrees, and now, have had the distinct privilege to practice functional medicine for over 10 years. And I just couldn't love this work more.
Yes, I know. It's so true. So many of us practitioners go down the same road. But I think that's what everybody needs to do. You have your own story, your own experiences, and it's up to us to pay it forward. So I love that. And I know a lot of our audience, a lot of the girls that reach out to me are always looking for good functional practitioners that are out there that can help guide them and not just do like a little quick fix approach, but really get to the root causes of why they're maybe struggling with many different symptoms, and weight being one big symptom. So yeah. It sounds like you have something you wanted to say about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true, right? Because it's so rare. People will come to see me for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's digestion with a side of weight loss, and sometimes it's a weight loss with side of hormones, but very rarely is it ever just one thing.
It's true. It comes with a side of everything, I feel like.
Yes.
Because it's all connected. So it makes sense. So I love that. Okay. So tell us where you are located from. Where are you?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Cody.
Yeah.
So I will say my practice home is Chicago.
Okay.
But my living home is Switzerland. So
Oh my goodness.
how's that for a wild card?
That's amazing.
Yes. So my husband and I live in Lucerne, Switzerland for his work. And I am grateful to be able to work, I call it remotely.
Yeah. You are probably just living your most healthy life. I just think that that's so cool that nowadays that we're able to be able to run a practice remotely. And I think that's so cool because as, people are asking me, like I was just mentioning, which practitioners do I recommend? A lot of times they think that they need to live in the proximity of that practitioner, which is nice. It's nice to be able to meet with somebody in person, but there's just so much we can do through telehealth. And, there's a lot of things that can be done from afar. So I'm excited to get these girls your, ways that they can connect with you and our show notes and stuff so that maybe they can take advantage of some of the services that you provide. But let's get into it. Today, I wanted to talk about how we can ditch the all or nothing approach to weight loss, because I feel like this is something that so many of us kind of get caught up in. I know that there's a lot of us girls and people, but the audience that's here today is mostly women. But, I rarely run into somebody that doesn't tell me that they're trying to lose a little bit of weight. I was just on a hiking adventure, a backpacking trip with a bunch of ladies. We're all healthy and strong, and we're just like doing these amazing things. We hiked a total of about 70 miles up and down mountains through rivers. I mean, it was awesome. I was so proud of us. And we're all, in our late 40s, early 50s. But you know what the conversation was about a lot of the time was about how much we wish we could lose some weight. And I thought, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But also I just thought, man, we're kind of missing the point. We're making it so much about what's on that scale and less about like, how is our body feeling? How's our body functioning? But anyways, I would love for you to share some of your thoughts and your tips and tricks, because that's what we're all about here on the It's Her Time podcast. Is we love to talk about, have all the conversations, but also leave some really great actionable, items that we can, implement in our lives.
Yes, absolutely. Well, to circle back and talk a little bit more about that all or nothing approach. First of all, Cody, what I would say is that none of us invented this all or nothing approach. We inherited it.
That's
right.
True.
And so this inherited approach to how we care for our bodies, to how we lose weight or try to quote unquote be healthy, right? It's a great example is the Whole30 followed by pizza and a bottle of wine. No judgment, right? No judgment. I've done the equivalent. When I was back in the days of, my weight loss roller coaster, Whole30 didn't exist yet, but I had my own version, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right. But the all or nothing approach fundamentally is deprivation or overindulgence, right? And people get caught in this deprivation or overindulgence because it's the paradigm they were born into, right? And the fundamental problem with this all or nothing approach is, well, first of all, it just doesn't work. I would say there are two problems. One, it doesn't work. Two is that it's born of self-aggression, which is why I would say it doesn't work, right? So, whether one is depriving themselves or they're overindulging, which is different than indulging, that either one of those is an expression of self-aggression. And so for me, one of the reasons I absolutely love partnering with people in this area of their lives is it's really a sacred journey of shifting and authoring a new approach that is born of self-love. Yes. And that self-love is expressed as what I call mastering your middle ground. Right. Yeah. So fundamentally speaking, that is the journey when I partner with people in this area. That is the journey we are embarking on together.
Right. Well, and it makes all the difference because, like you said, it doesn't work. A lot of times that approach of like the all or nothing can work for the short term, but rarely does it ever work. That's why we go on multiple different diet plans over and over and over throughout our life. When I was in private practice, I would talk to clients, and one of the first questions I would ask them in our health history, first session was how many diets have you been in over the last 10 years? And it was 20, it was 20 more. I mean, it was just incredible. People were always just trying the next big thing and being frustrated because they thought that because it wasn't successful long term, that there was something inherently wrong with them, that they were somebody that, didn't have enough willpower, didn't have enough mental strength, didn't, they instantly looked at themselves to see what it was that they were doing wrong, right? And it was almost like the things that they would do to counteract this wrong behavior that they were apparently doing was to punish themselves. And it just, it was a vicious downward spiral for a lot of these clients that I would work with. And so I love that your approach is about teaching us about how taking care of our body and thinking about weight and all of that is really just needs to be done with the approach of self-love.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what you just captured there in, a story that so many women can relate to, right? 30 diets in the last 20 diets in the last fill in the blank years, right? And, similarly, when I work with people in this area in service of creating closure with this part of their lives, one of the things I'll ask women is, when did it come on your radar that your body was a way it shouldn't be? Whether, your weight or your, just anything, that your body was a way it shouldn't be. And, time and time again, I hear people saying, 5 years old, 8 years old. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I just want to cry for these, the little girl and these grown women, it's just, but it's for many, many people, it has been decades and decades. And the good news is even if that's true for you, for your listeners, whatever, there is a new path ahead, right? That can be made a thing of the past. And for me, one of the most compelling reasons, well, I would say two compelling reasons to make it a thing of the past is, one is in service of, you, the person who's struggling, feeling your best, looking your best so you can be your best. And two is so that we can collectively create a whole new paradigm that we pass down to future generations.
It's so true. Kind of going back to what we were, talking about in the beginning, how we started our journeys as practitioners. There's just there's so much wealth that comes from health, right? And it's not just about us. When we are healthy, then we're able to show up in life as our very best selves and have the positive impact that we're meant to have. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a positive impact if you're unhealthy. It just means that you're limited. There's some, limit to what you're able to go and do. And I especially love the thought and the idea. And that to me is very motivating to think about younger generations and the impact that you're going to have on them. And so I think that's really motivating. For me, I found when I was personally, and then as I've worked with other clients and things like that along their weight loss journey, it wasn't a very, very important thing for each of us to discover and we call it always our why, right? But our motivation, what is actually motivating us to be able to be consistent and to keep like our healthy lifestyle and nutrition and all of the different healthy habits that we're trying to implement into our life, how to keep that sustainable, and it really is coming down to understanding the why. And if your why is because I hate myself, is because I'm not good enough, or it's because, whatever negative thought might be coming, in through your mind, that is never going to keep you going. That's going to just be something that is unmotivating, and not motivating at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you lean into and guide people on their why. I am a big believer that we don't buy what we do, we buy why we do it. Right? Our why is, when we're clear on our why and habitually connect to our why, it changes the very nature of our choices. Right? It completely transforms what becomes possible for us to do from love over time. And it really is an overtime thing, right? It's, this area of health, it's like there's no other area where immediate expertise is almost expected of ourselves, right? It's like, can you imagine when you started learning addition in school, if the next day they said, okay, now we're going to teach you calculus? It's like, what? That makes no sense, right? So, it's the same thing with this area. And for a variety of reasons, people are starting from different places, right? I meet with some people who, when they were growing up, maybe both their parents worked, or maybe they had only one parent at home. And for a million different reasons, their dinner was whatever they could find in the cabinet. Sometimes it was Oreos, whatever it was. So sometimes people are starting from there. It's okay. We can still author a new future. Sometimes people are starting from a totally different place. And the main thing to me is let's learn where you are and where you're committed to being and what becomes available. And then let's figure out how we're going to help you cross the monkey bars such that that future does become your truth.
I love that. Yeah. You have to start where you're at. Right. And again, it's that whole thought of like the all or nothing, like we've, kind of talked about. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's that good and then better and then best and one foot in front of the other. And these tiny little steps then add up and they get you in the right direction. It's not, this is so cliche, but it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, right? It takes time. And it's, to establish any good habit, it takes time. So,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's always more. And that's actually part of the fun.
Yeah. And you have to adjust too. That's the thing too. A lot of times I've found that for myself is I have always loved healthy habits. Thankfully, it's been something. I was raised with a very healthy mom and dad that loved exercise. And, we weren't the best eaters. We were definitely, products of all of the processed food in the 80s and stuff, but we were very active. And so that wasn't something hard for me to, establish in my life. But as I got older and kind of, for every decade, I felt like I had to change my approach, to like eating and exercising and mindset and all of this. And so it wasn't just this, I do this, I eat this, I move like this every single day of my life. And then this is the result, it was like learning too, that it's like, it's a journey and that there's going to be lots of twists and turns and that there's going to be some adjustments, but don't even think about that so much as just getting started. Right. And so would you say that the first step would be to find the why, like we've talked about, or what would be the first step that somebody would take that they decided that this is the journey that they're going to go on?
No, Cody, you totally captured it right there. Yeah. And I would say, get clear on your what and your why, because they're connected, okay. Right? And so, what is your intention for your health in your life? Right? If you could just click your heels and author a 5-year future, what would that look like? And what would that feel like? And what would it be like? What would it be like to get dressed in the morning and to walk around in the world and with that future, right? So the what, and then as you start to tell that story, naturally what will emerge is the why. Why? That will be captured in your experience largely, but also possibly and actually what you're able to do when this area of your life is just handled, right? All of the headspace and care that you're currently using, that's kind of like tied up resources,
right?
If it were freed up, what would you create with it?
I would love to know, and hopefully this isn't too personal, but when you started on your journey, what was your what and what was your why?
Yeah. So my what was being empowered by the beauty and ability of my body and my mind. And my why was allowing me the opportunity to contribute to other people in their journeys.
I love that.
To empower them, to inspire them, to educate them, to guide them in their journeys.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you were feeling like you were on a path that was, you could feel what you wanted to accomplish, but you felt like there were some things that were holding you back. And so
yeah, it was really, it really did live for me as mastering something in service of, right? This life is such a gift. I'm so grateful for this life, right? And to me, it's like, wow, it's really important to me to do everything I know to do from a place of love and grace to honor the gift that is this life.
Mm-hmm. And now when you look back to the version of you, when you started all of this, are you seeing just how much, the choices that you made back then have allowed you to manifest, this life in Switzerland and this beautiful life that you're able to live? Do you look back and are you just amazed and so proud of yourself?
I am, but I would say, I also am so present to that it was such a journey, right? It didn't happen in a month or a year, it really to arrive, to journey. There were so many things that I saw that I needed to cultivate to live that truth. Yes, I needed to get specific education to be able to effectively guide people. Right. To be able to understand how one body's working and where their point of leverage is versus somebody else's, right? Like that. But then there was also, for my own self, it was cultivating a whole new habit of being kind and honest, right? Because oftentimes people choose one or the other. They're kind and they don't look. Right? They don't look at what they're doing or they're not doing because the only thing they know to do when they're honest is beat themselves up. Right. And I definitely had that habit. So it really was, I had to come up with some new strategies and solutions to develop a habit of being kind and honest. Right. Just as one example among many, 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 right. Let alone all of the little strategies that I figured out along the way that really just worked for me and make me feel great.
I love it. So much truth. And so I know the audience and me as well, we're just wanting to get into it. Let's talk about the things that you had to learn to cultivate. What were the little steps that you took? If we were to give a roadmap, to the audience, what would that look like? Where would we start?
Well, so we would start with getting clear on your intention for your health in your life. So that is where we would start.
Okay.
And then we would continue by being sure we're present to our intention, right? It's one thing to get clear on your intention and stay present. It's not going to do a whole lot of good. In other words, the default inherited perspective is very, very likely to win if we get clear on our intention and stick it in a drawer and forget about it.
Right.
Right. So there's getting clear on our intention and remaining present to it. And then there's stepping into a journey called how can I, right? How can I? So actually living as an inquiry, how can I live aligned with my intentions? And some of that may include seeking guidance, right? It may include, I actually am not really sure how I should be moving or eating or supplementing or, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I really could use some expert guidance on that. And then that would be a great next step to take. Right.
Let me just stop right there really quick because I want to make sure we're clear on it. So when you're saying to be present with your intention, is that like meditating or is that like journaling? What does that look like?
Good question. I think it can look different for different people. And so I think the self-authoring of that is really important.
Okay.
Right. And I would say that self-authoring piece is one of the things that's really missing from all the diet books, right? Because what worked for me or works for you doesn't necessarily work for the gal next door, right? But I will say I can share some examples of people who I work with, what they do. Right. Some people actually write down their intention every day. I call it your vision of vitality. They write down their vision of vitality every day and they read it aloud. And there's actually some real genius there because when we write, and especially in cursive, it triggers a part of our brain in a really unique and powerful way. Yes, so that's powerful. One way. Yeah. Another way is really just simply reading it aloud to ourselves. And certainly, there are people who will read it aloud. They'll take 3 minutes to meditate on it and actually envision what it feels like, that intended future, everything that represents. And then maybe they'll read it one more time. So lots of different ways, but I definitely encourage people to do it at the beginning of the day. It's like a bookend, right? And gives you, once you know where home base is, you can find places over time to come back to it throughout the day. Oh, what's my intention? Oh, right. Okay. How could I, what's my best game then to live, more aligned with it?
I just wanted to stop there because I do believe that that is the missing piece. I feel like in order for us to achieve something, we have to see it and we have to feel it. And I think that's where a lot of times we skip over that part because it feels like there's a lot of work that has to be done right there. But that work is really what's going to actually make it possible because you're going to be able to get yourself in that state of mind and state of being in order to actually manifest whatever it is that your goals are. And then I love your next step too. I didn't mean to like stop you too soon with that because I thought it was so great too, is that this is the point. Then once you have that feeling, that real clarity, what it is that you're doing and why, then it's how do you get the support around you? So it could be reaching out to somebody like you or somebody like me that used to do this, or your best friend or your mom or whoever, it is that could help guide you. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly. Right. So, just like if you were looking to get really good at tennis, you would probably hire someone who knew a lot about what is required to get really good at tennis, right? If this is an area where you're struggling, right? You have a long history of, okay, I tried, I failed, I tried, I failed, I tried, I failed. To me, it just makes sense that like, okay, great. So find someone who can help you win the game you're committed to winning.
Yeah, they can help make those little tweaks, turn that racket, in just a little bit.
Right.
So you're not just lobbing those balls out,
That's right.
It's having that expert eye, somebody that has been through it, knows what it looks like, knows the obstacles that might be getting in your way and sees you and is observing you and is seeing maybe where it is you might be tripping up. So it's so helpful. I do highly recommend, not just because I was a coach and did that for so long. It just is very helpful to get somebody that is a mentor that can be kind of a person that's looking from the outside in. And that's just like a good way to like keep you in check and keep you motivated. And, when you're having moments of like confusion, or maybe you're feeling like you aren't as motivated. I mean, it's just really helpful to have that support built in. That's something that's a big piece as well. I love that.
Yeah. And I would add to that, when I work with people, I really do take a data-driven approach. And so if we're talking about just this area of weight, right, there are different physiological reasons why people's bodies might be holding on to every calorie that comes into it, right? And so that data really informs what actions are appropriate, right? So oftentimes, I'm sure you have encountered this many times, Cody, like women are like, oh my gosh, I hope it's my thyroid. I hope it's my thyroid. Right?
Yes.
And it's so funny. It like cracks me up to no end. And the thing is I will say, when I run labs, which I do with everyone, it's like, okay, 99% of the time, the thyroid is working great. And that 1% of the time when there is, someone is genuinely has an underactive or hypothyroid, is in a hypothyroid state, it's essential that be addressed, but it's not going to do it alone. In other words, I've not once encountered someone who, you have undiagnosed hypothyroidism. So certainly we're going to address that, but that itself doesn't solve the weight problem, right? So, okay, essential to handle, but not the keys to the kingdom that many women hope it will be, right? So then we have to figure out, okay, what else is going on? And from a physiological perspective, there are 3 common things that I see that can act as barriers to weight loss. One of them is elevated inflammation. So, oftentimes women will come to me and they'll say, I feel really inflamed. And I'll ask them what it feels like in their body. And maybe they'll say, I'm bloated, or my skin's red, or my joints hurt, or something like that. But, most of the time, Cody, and I know you know this, people have silent inflammation. In other words, inflammation is elevated. They have no symptoms at all, except that they can't lose weight, right? So it's just not on the radar as a symptom of challenges with weight. So until we start to really drastically shift that physiological inertia, right? We break the vicious cycle of inflammation. They're going to feel like they're pushing a boulder up the hill, right? In the way of trying to lose weight. So first of all, knowing, is inflammation elevated? The second physiological barrier to weight loss that I see is suboptimal insulin sensitivity, right? And this is very different than lab normal, right? So lab normal insulin goes up to 19 and I want to see it under 7. So, suboptimal is very different than lab normal. And there are some very targeted things we can do to improve insulin sensitivity. And then lastly is, I like to say, detox pathways gunked up, right? Yeah. Detox pathways that are just not moving smoothly, which is going to impact hormones and is also going to add to inflammatory load. So all kinds of things that we see with those detox pathways that can interfere with weight also.
You are so right on. All of those things are absolutely, the real things that we need to be like addressing. It's not always just about the calories in versus calories out, that law of thermodynamics. It's like there's true to a point, but there's so much more, especially for women. There's just so much more to the story. And I love that. And those are things I do highly recommend getting tests. I know I talk about it a lot on this podcast, how important and empowering it is to test and not just guess, because we can understand what it is that could be, going on in the body and maybe getting a clearer idea of maybe what the root cause is, because weight, like you said, is a symptom. Your weight is a symptom of inflammation. It is a true sign of inflammation. So it could be thyroid. And I know people do. They always wish that that's the thing, but it can be frustrating to them to realize that just taking that prescription is not going to then all of a sudden like rev their metabolism. And most of the time that underactive thyroid is also a symptom of so many other things that are happening downstream. And so it's sometimes it's definitely something we want to address, but we have to go deeper. We have to go a little deeper in to see why. Why is the thyroid now not functioning optimally? And what can we do? What do we have the ability to do in order to help support, the optimal function? And so I love that you brought that up, because I do think, again, that's a missing piece. A lot of times we hear our best friends are doing this new exercise program, or we read in a magazine or whatever, or online or on Pinterest or on wherever about this new diet, or something. And then we think that's the missing key. That's what I should be doing. And that's going to make all the difference in the world. And it can feel beyond frustrating when you're doing everything right, in air quotes, then your body's not actually responding the way that you're thinking it should. So these are some key areas definitely to pay attention to. So I'm so happy that you brought that up.
Yeah. And it's so fun. And I know you've seen this too, Cody, is, when we get these numbers and we start to go to work, especially I find when it comes to inflammation, right? People will start to implement some nutritional shifts and targeted supplementation and lifestyle modifications and things like that. And sometimes, depending on how high that inflammatory load is, right? It's a measurable number. Depending on how high it is, sometimes people will take actions for weeks with no evidence. And I fully appreciate it. People just want to pull their hair out. They're like, oh my gosh, I've like turned my life upside down,
right?
Doing all these things, and they're making some fabulous shifts and really in the journey. And, once we break that cycle of inflammation, it's like, oh, there it goes. Right. Yep. Things really start to change and their symptoms in the number on the scale. And then ultimately, when we go back and check those labs again, it's like, well, there you go. Look at what you did.
Yes, I know, because we've learned to measure our progress based on what that number on the scale is saying, or like the size or the way our clothes are fitting. And what I've personally found is that the more inflamed we are, or the more we've like actually tried to lose weight, the more diets we've been on, the more like crazy exercise programs we've been on, the longer it actually takes. And in a way, I say it's your body trying to see if it can trust you, that you're going to stay consistent with some of these healthy, anti-inflammatory habits that now you're trying to implement, the good food choices, the things like that, the proper rest, the stress management, all of these things. And it might not just fall off of you, on a consistent basis. For me personally, and I see this a lot with other clients, is that it's like 6 weeks for some reason is my magic number. Nothing. And then 6 weeks, all of a sudden my body's like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. You're staying consistent. And then it like releases, and so don't get frustrated if that's, how it works for you. Just know that it's that consistent, consistency that's going to pay off. And what you're doing, these healthy habits, these healthy choices are absolutely benefiting you. You are benefiting from them, whether it's showing up on the scale or not right now. It will, because you're doing things that are loving and nourishing to your body.
Yeah. So well said. So well said.
Yeah, there's so many times that we feel frustrated with that. I'm thinking of a client, a story that I had. It was a male, but that's great. He first came to me. The guy had been overweight his entire life and was, over 350 pounds. Big guy, really sweetheart. His name is Chris, if he's listening. And I loved this guy, but he definitely had a why. He felt like he was, he had a big, purpose on this earth, and he felt like he was being held back and not able to do it. And we talked a lot about nutrition and exercise, but what we mostly talked about is who it is that he wants to be when he shows up into this world, and what does that look like, and what would be something that he thinks sounds amazing that he could do, that he right now is thinking is impossible. And that was for him. He always wanted to hike. We live in Utah. We have these beautiful mountains everywhere. He just wanted to be somebody that was outdoorsy and hike. And so I said, well, could you hike on a regular basis? And he's like, I don't think so. And I was like, well, let's define what hiking looks like, here. And it literally just started with like walking down a path. And then he just determined that he was going to do this on a consistent basis. And so he walked the same path every single day. And, it was just not like that big of an effort, but it paid off. And eventually, long story short, he's such an inspiration to me. I absolutely adore him. I'm still close with him, but he started making it so his path was more of an incline. It was a little bit longer. He just kind of slowly took little steps to make it so it was a little bit harder. But he is now an ultra marathoner. He's out there running like 100-mile races, and he's so cute. He does these races, and after every race, he gets a tattoo of whatever that race's logo is. And so he's just got tattoos now all over his body, and I just think it's so awesome because he had his why. He knew why he wanted to do it, and he took the steps. He took those consistent steps, and now look at where he's at. And the weight just happened to fall off. It wasn't this whole like mathematician, formula for him. It literally was feeling and trying to take the steps of the things that he really wanted to do that really made all of the difference for him in his life. And I think that that's what it needs to be for all of us. We need to kind of be more like Chris if we're trying to improve our weight and try to improve our life or whatever. Just remember to keep it, a little more, I don't know what I'm trying to say other than just say, make it simple, make it a little more simple than we think it has to be, and just stay consistent.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about that story, Cody, is how Chris met himself where he was.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't resist his truth. He didn't sit back and bemoan the fact that he couldn't, do a 7-mile hike or something like that. He came up with criteria that he would qualify as winning, right? Yes. So, okay, for me, based on where I am right now, he, came up with, okay, if I walk this path this many times a week, that's winning, right? And he he created a game he could win. And when he found it easy to win that game, he created a bigger game. It's awesome.
You just summed that up. Thank you. Thank you. Because I was like, I'm telling the story and I'm like not doing a very good job at like,
you did a great job.
What it was that he was doing that was actually leading to success. That's exactly. And that's something that we can all do. That's something we need to do. Yeah, that's awesome. These are such good tips. Thank you so much for making this, something that we can understand a little bit better and think of the things that we can, consider when we're going down our own path, and how we don't have to make it an all or nothing approach. Really, it's just taking these little steps and figuring out what our path is going to look like.
Yeah. In those little choices in the moment, right? Every little win is a vote for yourself, right? Every little choice you make with intentionality that is a better choice. Forget perfection. Perfection is a myth, right?
Right.
But just a better choice. It's such a vote for yourself, right? And one of the things I think about, Cody, is if people really engaged in a question called, if I were just making choices based on what would make me most proud of myself, what choice would I make? I think, if people were to kind of engage in that inquiry with themselves and start to take actions that are consistent or more consistent with the answers, like, wow, it would be so cool. Things would transform left and right.
I love that. I love that approach because it's so empowering. And, one of the things I love to teach people too is how much more effective it is when we take an empowered approach versus a willpowered approach. And so, I love that, like those little voting for yourself, with all of these little steps. So staying consistent, making a list of the things that you can do that would be a win and that you could stick with, that would all, lead to something really great. And so, for me personally, I'll share some of the things that are kind of, I call them my non-negotiables now, but, is waking up in the morning and having that quiet time and getting really present in my, like what my why is for the day and where I want to be. When I do that, I feel like it sets the tone for the whole rest of the day of how I want to treat my day and myself and my body and others. And then getting some movement, staying consistent with that, making sure that I'm, getting my steps in. So I usually try to get at least 10,000 steps in every single day or more. And then I'm a big believer, especially for us girls, in strength training. I think that's really important that we build that muscle. Getting the water intake is really important. I don't count calories. I don't count macros. Instead, I just have a mindset of nourishing. I want anything I put in my mouth, I'm hoping that it's nourishing to my body. And sometimes it's just nourishing to my soul, Sometimes I need a big bowl of mac and cheese, because that's just what feels nourishing to my soul. But most of the time I'm trying to think of the things that are really going to help support my body's function. And that's where supplements come into. I'm consistent with taking our supplements. With Mixers products, that's something that we're big about. We want to make health easy. And so we provide healthy supplements for, to give our bodies the nutrients, those building blocks that are so necessary for optimal health.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'd love to hear what you do, if you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, similarly, I'm a big believer in the bookends of the day, right? So starting my day, I grounded my intention and other non-negotiables in my life, lots and lots of veggies. I'm not vegetarian or vegan by any stretch of the imagination, but I know I feel my best when vegetables are a big part of my life. So veggies are a big part of my life. And movement. So when I was 25, I opened the first high intensity strength training gym in Chicago in 2002. And 21 years later, it's still there. So I actually sold my half and went to graduate school. But when I'm back in Chicago, I do go see them at Citywide Super Slow. So I, like you, strength training is a big part of my life. Moving my body is just like, it's just a joy. It's like in hiking, similarly here, I think about hiking. To me feels like I'm playing with the earth. Nice. It's so fun. It's so fun. So movement, and then, reading is a big part of my life, whether it's reading something for professional growth or personal growth. And really more often than not, it's a little bit of both. But I think we probably have some major similarities in how we move about our days.
Yeah. And, there are things that we've found that have worked. And so, the reason I like to make these kinds of lists, Jessie, is because I know as our girls are listening to us, they are having lists maybe going on in their minds of the things that they do on a consistent basis that are really benefiting them. And if you don't have a list, girls, I'd love for you to start thinking about it. Maybe take some of the things off of mine and Jessie's lists and see if you can start implementing them into your life and just see how these little tiny steps that get us pointed in the right direction can really make a big difference. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It just has to be a little something every single day.
Yeah. And I would say even, if you feel a little bit overwhelmed at all of the things Cody and I just shared, just pick one thing. Pick one thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then build on it, as you can, as you start getting that down. Yeah. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, like I keep saying, and it just needs to be just something to start. But you're worth it. We're all worth it. We're all worth the effort to vote for ourselves and to have these little wins so that we can feel our best and really step into our, highest health and be able to make the positive impact in this world that we're all meant to make. And so I love that. Now, Dr. Heymeyer, we would love to let the girls know how they can connect with you. So tell us how you are out there. I know you're in Switzerland, and maybe people want to fly out to visit you in Switzerland. That would be amazing. I might sign up for that.
Yes,
yeah,
anytime.
I might sign up for that.
Absolutely. I have many hikes I'd love to share.
I love that. That would be so fun.
Yeah. And by the way, we don't have a car. We use our feet for transportation and their public transportation, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's
it's
something that
great.
I feel like they do better over there than they do here, right?
Yes. But yes, people, you can find me at wellempowered.com, and a few things about wellempowered.com. One is, if you're interested in exploring working one-on-one, please schedule a 30-minute complimentary Zoom consultation. Mm-hmm. And please make sure you let me know where you heard about me, because you will be provided with 10% off if you do choose to move ahead and working together.
So nice.
And then also I have lots of free resources on my website. So if someone wants to just pop over there to wellempowered.com, take a look at webinars. I've got 30-minute mini Mondays. I've got longer webinars, all kinds of things you're free to access. And then I will be soon offering a weight loss mastery course that will be available to people who apply and are accepted to it. So that also people could find out more about through scheduling a 30-minute consultation. Amazing. And on Instagram at wellempowered.
Okay. Well, this makes it easy for us to find you. And what an amazing gift that somebody can come and have a 30-minute consultation with you. And how exciting that you've got an online program that's going to be coming soon. I know that many of us will be able to take advantage of that. We're excited. So girls, let her know that you heard about her and this program and these amazing offers from the It's Her Time podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest here today, Jessie. We really appreciate all of your wisdom and all of your thoughts. These are things that I know that we can all just take into our lives and really improve our health and just our futures and our next generations, have that good impact on the world that we want to have. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate all the good that you're putting out there. So, all right, girls. Well, thank you for tuning in. We always love having you here and having these types of conversations. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, please share this conversation with the girls in your life, because sharing is caring. And the more that we can have these kinds of conversations, the better we're going to be able to help one another, lift each other, and be able to live our best lives. So until next week, we always have new episodes that drop every single Tuesday. We talk all about hormones and health and happiness and all the things that make our lives that much better. So we hope you'll tune in next Tuesday. But until then, I hope you have a very happy and healthy week. We'll talk soon. Bye.